from the Dark Imp, helping parents reclaim family time by playing board games together. Today I'm going to show you two more complex games which you can really get your teeth stuck into during lockdown. I mean, lots of us are finding that we've got a little bit more time on our hands than we normally would, and sometimes I know I'm guilty of putting off learning the more complicated games because I don't feel like I've got time to really get into them. Now's our chance. So here's a couple of really good games that you might like to have a look at. First, the Magnificent. Now, the Magnificent isn't that complicated to play, but it's got quite a lot of components and it takes a little bit of time to get your head round first time you have a go at it. So there is a sort of circus theme. You are a ringmaster and you're trying to put on circus shows. You're aiming to attract performers and build tents for them to perform in. The theme is there, but it's not all over the game. So there's a lot of actions that you take, and you sort of forget that you're trying to put on a circus show. But let's see how it works. So each player has their own player board, like this, and there's one giant board in the middle of the table, and it really is giant. I mean, we've got quite a big table. And it really is difficult to get this board and the player boards around the edge. When you have also the player boards, these ones, so you've got one here and you've got one here and you've got one over here and one here, and these player boards, you have to put cards above them as well. So, you know, it's quite a challenge. So think about the space that you've got and how to do it. I know some people have got these sort of almost like a lazy Susan in the middle of the table, which elevates one board up and allows you to put your other boards on the table. And that's really good for games with big boards and lots of components. I haven't got one of them. I might need to invest. This would be a good candidate for that sort of setup. So in the Magnificent, you've got 3 different actions you can take each turn. It's a dice drafting game. So at the beginning of each turn, you're going to throw a load of dice, depending on how many people are playing. You're going to put them in this sort of big tent area. You're going to take, at the beginning of each turn, you're going to take one of those dice. Now the dice that you take, you then put on some special cards that you will have next to your player board. So you're going to have, at the start of the game, you're going to have 4 different master cards depicted by an M, and these let you do certain things. They give you benefits. So for example, gosh, this board's so big. For example, if you put a dice here, these are the ringmaster cards, right? So if you put a dice here, then you can get the benefit above it, which in this case means that if you have an orange dice, you can add 2 to its power. So it's all about gaining power and what you can do with that. So for example, you take an orange dice, you draft an orange dice, here's an orange 6, I'm going to take the orange 6, I'm going to put it on this, and I'm going to use 6 orange power. That's what I do. Now I've got 3 choices, 3 different actions I can take with that 6 power. First of all, I could do a build action. Where's my player board? Here it is. If I do a build action, I am taking tiles to go on my own board, and I'm going to lay those tiles in different places on the board. When I lay them over certain squares, it's going to give me benefits. And you can take small or large tokens in the colour of the dice that you're using. So if I'm using an orange dice, I'd either take these large ones or these small ones, or a combination of the 2. It comes with quite a nice little tray, not good for an angle. It comes with quite a nice little tray with all the different tiles in. There are 3 different colour dice. There's also a clear one, that's sort of a wild dice. So if you're using a green dice for the build action, you'll use the green tiles. Purple, you'll use the purple tiles. There's also some gems which you gain during the game, and they allow you to add power. So if you have we've just used a green dice, 6 power. If I have a green gem, I can give that in, get rid of it, and that will increase my power by 2. So you can, if you're using the build action, however much power you've got over here, that shows you what combination of those tiles you can use. You put them on your board, you lay over different things, you get more benefits. The second action you can take is the travel action, which is on this board, on the big player board, on the big master board. There's 3 different wheels, the travel wheels. You have these different wagons that go along the wheels. This is the purple one that goes around here. They always travel clockwise. However much power you've got, they jump onto the next spaces and you get everything that they jump over, you get a bonus for. So you get all of these gems. That's the main way to collect gems. And you also get some tent tiles. So there are these tent tiles that sit on top of these extra tiles over here. When you land on a tent tile, you can take it. Now this is really useful for the third and final action that you take. When you take a tent tile, you're going to put it on one of your tent spaces at the top of your player board. You get a benefit from whichever tent space you cover up, and you need tents to be able to perform. And perform is the third action. So whatever power you've got, you're going to spend it by moving your performing token, this is this big chunky one, up the track. So you can only move to an empty space, so if somebody else is in a space you can't move to it. If you've got 10 power, for example, you could move up here if the space is free. It tells you then how many performances you can do. That's 2 performances. And then you perform. Now at the beginning of the game, you get given 1 performer card. These are they're called posters in the game, but they have different performers on them. So that some of them are starting ones, they'll have a slightly different back. This is a starting one. The other ones you can acquire during the game. They might be more complicated, might be more difficult to put on, and also might give you more reward. So this is a fairly simple one, a starting one. So you'd have this card next to one of your... Now I've lost my player board. You'd have this card next to one of your tents. So you might have it here, for example. You get one tent to start off with, and you get 1 performer to start off with. So you can perform, take the perform action straight away. When you perform, you need a tent with a card attached to it. So if you've got a tent here but no card, you can't perform. If you've got a card here but no tent, you can't perform. So you perform. You get rid of the performance, but the tent stays where it is, the performer, and you get the benefit of whatever it says on the performance card. But all the performance cards have requirements on them. They need certain amounts of tiles, so this one requires this tile to be on your player mat. So if you have this tile, this green tile, somewhere on your player mat, then you can perform. Okay. The object of this whole game is to increase your points. So you get points when you perform. You get points at the end of each turn. So there are 3 rounds in the game, and at the end of each round, you can score one of your 4 master cards. So you have 4 master cards. You gain a 5th one right at the end of each turn, and then you score one of those 5. So I've said that the top of this card relates to your bonus you get when you play it. When you use it, and the bottom of this card relates to how you score it. So at the end of each of the first 2 rounds, you score one of them. At the end of the 3rd round, you score all of them, but you only get half marks on the 3rd round. Also, there are these trainer tiles, and they let you take these extra actions. You start off with I think you start off with one of these. Pretty sure. I think you start with 1. You can gain others as you go through the game. Any action you're taking, you'll have some of these on your tile because you draft them at the same time as drafting master cards, but you'll start with 1. See, there's a little spot for them here. And this is your gem storage space. And whenever you want to, you can put a trainer tile on, which gives you a special action. That might be getting money, because you need to pay at the end of each round. You have to pay according to how much power you have used. So you want to draft those high dice because they give you lots of power, but you have to pay for the power you use. So you have to make sure you have enough money, or ways to get enough money before the end of the turn. So some of these give you money, some of them give you a boost in a build action, some of them help you with perform actions, some of them let you change the colour of tiles or dice or all sorts of things. There's lots of variety. It plays, once you know how to play the game, it plays reasonably quickly. But there's quite a lot of decision making. So the time that it will take to play the Magnificent will depend upon the people in your group. It does extend according to how many people you have. So there's a good one-player version. You can play that quite quickly. I recommend learning, as always, learning yourself. And it's always great if there's a one-player version to a game, because it means that you can get stuck into a game while you're learning. So this is the Magnificent. It's a great game. Lots of interesting decisions and something to really think about while you're in lockdown. Secondly, let's just move these out of the way. Terra Mystica. That's going to fall on the floor. Terra Mystica. Terra Mystica is, as you can see from the size of the box, a giant game. It's also quite complex, slightly more complex actually than the Magnificent. On each turn you can only do one thing, but there's a variety of different things you can do, and it's really about how do I actually win. Like, I can understand what actions I can take and what those actions enable me to do, but it's putting all those things together in the right order, maximising the benefits you get from them. Those are really challenging decisions. So let's have a closer look at Terra Mystica. Okay, so in Terra Mystica, each player is going to be, it has their own faction, is going to be playing a different faction, and they have their own faction board, so their own personal player board. These boards are all double-sided, and the factions play quite differently actually. It's very asymmetric. They've got different benefits, different issues with them, and so for example this is the witches, and on the back there's a different faction that's also the same colour, and those are the Oren. We've got the swarmlings and the mermaids, and there are 7 different boards, I think, 7 different colours. You've got chaos magicians and giants. You've got all sorts of different things going on. So there's 14 different factions you can play with, but it's only a 5-player game. So you get quite a lot of replayability. You can play different faction each time you play, or you can decide to really keep playing the same one and try and get good at that particular faction. They start with different resources, and they have different costs for doing things, and they have different special abilities. As with the Magnificent, there is a large, though not so large, player board that goes in the centre of the table. And this is a map with different terrain types. There are 5 different kinds of terrain. You've got desert, I don't know what that's called, farmland, mountain, swamp. Oh, and the red one. The red one, whatever the red one is, I can't remember. And each player, you don't have 7. You don't have 5. You have 7. 7 different kinds. 7 different kinds of territory for the 7 different possible colour cards. On your board it shows you what's your home territory. So for example, this is the mermaid's home territory is the swamp area, the sort of watery one. And each other player is going to have a different top territory, home territory. You're never going to be competing for home territory. You can only build stuff on your home territory, and this is a game about building. But you can terraform the different territories, the different terrains, to flip it so that it's your own. So for example, on any terrain you can put one of these and you can turn it into your own terrain. It costs you to do that, and it costs you more the further away it is on the wheel from your own territory type. So, for example, the mermaids are fairly close to this sort of grey mud territory, and so it's easy for them to transform into forest or the sort of grey mud territory. Don't know what it's called, but it's really hard for them to terraform from a desert or a red mountain territory. So you have to make decisions about how you're growing on the board, where you're placing things. You have different buildings that are available to you. Let's get the green board. I've got the green buildings. So you're going to have 4 of these these are trading houses. You're going to have quite a number of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of these settlements. I haven't got them all out. You've got 1 stronghold, 1 sanctuary, and 3 temples. And those pieces, when they're all on the board, they cover up bonuses that you get once you've built them on the main map. You start with a certain number on the map in the first place. Usually it's 2 of these, depending on what your faction is. You'll start with 2 of those settlements on the board, and you get to put them where you want to put them. There are starting setups that are suggested in the book, which are quite helpful. Also, there are starting factions which are suggested in the book as well. And then on your turn, the first thing that happens at the beginning of each round is that you're going to acquire new resources. So anytime you see a sort of hand icon with something in it, that means you get it at the beginning of a round. So that's the income phase. You're going to generate income. That might be money. So look, here's a little hand with money, or it might be workers. You need your workers to build stuff, or it might be a priest. Your priest is particularly helpful for helping you go up one of the tracks on the boards, or it might allow you to move some power. So on your board you have a sort of a power section here. You have 3 different power bowls, and depending on your faction, you'll start with a certain number in bowl 1 and bowl 2. You never gain any, but you can move them round. Once you've got power in bowl 3, you can use it to give you benefits, to help you build more stuff, to give you more resources, more workers, more money, all sorts of things. Okay, so on your turn, you choose one of 8 possible actions. You can choose to terraform a piece of land, but you need to pay for that according to how many these spades. That's upside down. These spades, and that has a cost. You can get some of them for free. There are some bonuses that allow you to get them for free, but most of the time you're going to have to pay for them with workers and with money. So you can terraform and build settlements. That's one of the things you can do. You can up your shipping track, which allows you to have more connectivity across the regions, which helps with endgame scoring. You can upgrade buildings, so you can upgrade a settlement into a trading house, for example, paying the appropriate cost each time, or upgrade a trading house into a stronghold or a temple into a sanctuary. And each time you're going to pay the cost, and each time, well, you may get a benefit. So if you place the sanctuary or the temple, you're going to get to choose one of these special tiles which give you immediate bonuses or ongoing bonuses, both of which can be really useful. You could use power to do one of the special actions on the board. The special actions are on this board at the bottom. So there's all sorts of things you can use your power for along the bottom. You can use your special action on your own player board. So each player has a special action on their player board that they can use once they've built their stronghold. So you could use that special action. You each have one of these tiles each game, and some of those have a special action on them. So that's another action you can do. Or you can decide to end your turn, and if you end your turn, you put the scroll that you've had for that turn back. Remember, these give a bonus, and you select a new scroll. And some of them will have money on, depending on whether they were selected or not for the last turn. Your aim is to get different buildings connected next to each other. When you do that, you're going to, if you've got a certain number connected, then you're going to be able to found a town. When you found a town, you get a special little town tile, which gives you more benefits. Also, you can go up this particular track. So when you have a priest, you can put a priest on the bottom here. The priest will help you increase your way up these tracks. There are other ways to do it as well. If you see on these special tiles, you're going to have, this allows you to go up 2 on the red track. When you go up the track, you're going to get some power when you pass certain points. And only one player can get into these top squares, and to get to each of these top squares, you need a town. You need to have founded a town. At the end of the game, there's different ways that give you points. You get points as you go through the game, but you also get points at the end of the game. So the end game scoring is about how many buildings, how many areas you have connected. So if you have the most areas connected, you're going to get the most points. If you have, and then you also get points according to whether you're first, second or third on these tracks. So it can be a really big swing if you manage to get up high on a couple of these and other players haven't managed to do that. There's a lot going on. There are lots of decisions. As you can see, there's quite a lot of components. There's 3 different boards that everybody's looking at. There's also some extra bonus tiles that I haven't even shown you that give you bonuses according to whether you do things in a certain turn. So each round will have a round bonus. You need to be able to think into the future, to plan out your actions now according to what you want to do later. It's complicated. There's a lot to think about. But it's a very meaty game that offers huge amounts of replayability, and I just keep wanting to play it because I want to get better at it. I need to beat my son. I still haven't beaten him. This is Terra Mystica.